the moment.
Okay, so if you go to the room chat, I don't know, someone help him with that. I don't know how to do it on the computer.
Play stream. Let's see. Room chat.
Can someone help him?
I'm sorry. What do you want to? I can help. I'm
I
tabbed out.
want him to find the room chat on his computer.
Okay. You see that we're in you're in the Clubhouse VC.
Yeah.
Right next to that name, Clubhouse, you'll see a little chat box to the right.
Okay. Yep.
Click
okay,
on
found
that. Open. There you go. All right.
it. Here I am. Okay. Yeah. That's my. Yep. That's my. Somebody's already.
Yeah, guys. We're waiting on Alex. He's supposed to be arriving soon. Triggerman is here, and we'll be getting started pretty soon.
You mean am I a national socialist in the classical sense, or do you mean
I
in
don't mean
the?
that. I mean, are you a white separatist, white supremacist? I don't know, like crazy person. That's what I'm asking,
Look,
really.
I'm streaming
Well,
this. Like, I
again,
don't want to talk
those
about the
terms,
topic. This is like
those
literally
terms get
demonetizing
used to the
topic.
point where they don't really mean anything.
Look, can we not talk about this?
Yeah.
Can we please not talk about this?
All right,
Just
all right,
keep
all
it
right.
TOS. Just keep it TOS.
All right. Okay. So Alex still isn't here.
I am here, actually.
Oh, I'm so sorry. All right.
It's all right.
So just everyone, please do not talk until they're done. Doesn't matter.
No.
Okay, just please don't talk. Please don't hot mic. Everyone mute up.
In fact, everyone physically mute your microphone.
Yeah, that
Just
would be great.
Everyone
just mute up.
Everyone mute. There's not going to be any, accident. There's just mute. Mute or you will be muted. JD Kane, John Lee's Rice Cooker. Do you want me to do it for you?
Sorry, my mic has its own mute on it.
I don't care.
Okay, sure, why not?
Microminds. Okay, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'll just do this for you guys. Diehead. Who else? Everyone else? Okay, there we go. Okay. Haiti has done the legwork and gotten these two together. I am streaming this. I put on the stream the argument so people can follow along. And yeah, I guess take it away, boys. Triggerman, you have some grievances with the argument, no?
Well, I mean, it was just addressing the things that I saw from a what I would consider a historical Christian perspective.
Okay, that's cool. And hi, we haven't actually said hello. So hi, I'm Alex, by the way. I don't actually know
Alex.
your name.
I'm Jake.
Jake, okay. I mean, it seems easier than calling you Triggerman. Sounds a bit weird. If that's all right, I'll call you Jake.
That's fine.
Okay.
Nice to meet you, Alex.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So yeah, the other day I got a notification just saying that you'd I don't know why, but WordPress, I suppose, sent me a notification to say that you'd posted, or I think it was because you'd linked my blog in yours, so I get like a ping back or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It came to my attention some way like that, and then so you'd written a reply to my blog post. So I read that, and then I thought we could have a conversation about it, basically. So it doesn't need to be like a debate kind of thing. Can just be a conversation. I'm not like trying to get ponage or whatever, but it is interesting. I mean, I thought the argument was interesting. So if you had a critique to offer, we could go through that.
Well, I think it's if the people who are, if you're looking for it on my blog, it's called Ignorance or Intention. It should be the second post from the top of the page. And that gives you a start. And it actually, I post the introduction on my name blog, and then I have a secondary blog that I posted that I carried it over to, because it was more, that secondary blog is more historical Christian doctrine discussion. So that's where I linked it over to it. But the
Cool.
So your argument was built around the truthfulness of the second premise of your argument, and that's where I began to push the validity of that premise. And I guess if we're going to start, we have to define, if nobody's saying the argument, premise one, if Christianity is true, then a perfect being exists. Premise two, if a perfect being exists, then Christianity is false. Therefore, Christianity is false. Well, it assumes the existence of a perfect being. So we have to define what is a perfect being in that sense. So I guess it's only fair to start from that position by defining what we mean by a perfect being. So, Alex, I kick it to you to give. I didn't really see that definition in
No.
you seem to assume it but not define it.
Yeah, okay. So what I meant was basically this kind of standard view of God where he's like omnibenevolent, omnipotent, and omniscient, right?
So
More
you're
or
looking
less.
for
Like,
the
that's
big
just a shorthand.
the big three: omnipotent, omnibenevolent,
and omniscient. Yeah, right. But then,
So
it goes back a little bit deeper than that, because I think the idea, you might say, goes back at least as far as like the 11th century, right? With St. Anselm, who's like giving this argument that God exists because God is the greatest conceivable being, right?
Right.
The thing than which none greater than can be conceived. And like
Right.
intrinsic to that notion of like being the best, most perfect being or whatever is having these good qualities to their maximum extent, right? And
Right.
that's how people like Plantinga has a version of Anselm's argument, right? Like 900 years later or whatever it is,
Right.
1,000 years later, and he's saying some kind of similar idea, right? That God exemplifies the great making properties to their maximal extent. It's basically the same idea, and that's what I mean. It's typical to philosophical Christian apologetics.
Right.
And yeah,
that's where like I would I am into philosophy of religion. That's where my degree was heading. I had to drop out of school for in my senior year. I like half a dozen hours of electives getting my degree, but my primary degree trajectory was philosophy of religion. So I see this in the philosophy of religion more the classical philosophical definition of God. And but at the same time, my direction is theological. I am a Christian. I have to begin from Revelation, who God has revealed himself to be. And in that, we can see, yes, and I would argue, being a Christian from a Reformed tradition, that like Romans 1 argues, men know God. So when we say we have this general philosophical conception of God, I can say yes. If God is all of these things, omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, those words have meaning. And we can and man can in himself see these things, or not see them, but recognizes them innately, inherently. We may not, so that when we are confronted with God, we see these things. Now, in your post, in your argument, see if I can find it right quick. Like the third paragraph, you said, or let's see. Yeah, third paragraph. Given the argument is, let's see. No, maybe that wasn't it. I don't remember where it was now. All right. So like we talked, so the very first thing you open up with, you had your premises, and your three problems, of course, were original sin and the atonement, and then salvation in general. So when we begin talking and we try to, within the context of recognizing these three elements, let's just say omnibenevolence, which we would call the all goodness of God.
Mhm.
Would you, in that, what would you put into that category?
What would I put into that category?
Yeah, when you think of omnibenevolence, what would you put into that category?
Well, I mean, typically philosophers think that it means something. I mean, well, one way of thinking about it is that it means to kind of reduce unnecessary like harms or whatever that are going on. So like if I see somebody and they're suffering and I could do something about it, and it's minor inconvenience to me or whatever, the good thing to do is to help them. So like
Right.
a maximally good person wouldn't let unnecessary harms just happen without doing anything about it. So that's one way of thinking about what it means to be perfectly good. I had in mind a kind of narrower aspect of that, not just perfect goodness, but perfect like justice. So I had in mind the idea that. Sorry.
Okay, I'm just so justice is what you're are you thinking more in terms of justice? Are you thinking more in terms of a legal sense, like right and wrong, actually like deciding between them? Like if somebody so you were talking about, reducing harm.
Mm-hmm.
So if that harm is caused by another person, what
Mm-hmm.
makes that harm, and I see harm as a neutral term. It's not, it has no moral meaning in and of itself, because harm it's a word, it's one of those words that gets thrown around. Well, that harms me. Well, how does it harm you? Is it harm you emotionally, intellectually? Is it a combination? Are you being harmed physically? So when we're talking about harm and justice, we are meaning to make distinctions in gradation between. Would you say that there's good harm and bad harm?
Look, it's not all about harm, right? All I was
Okay.
saying was you asked me what do I mean by good, and I gave you like the beginning outline of a bit of the answer of that. But just typically, where do I start? One way of thinking about it is it's about reducing unnecessary harm, if you can do, right? That's just one aspect. I'm not saying it's reductive. That's the only thing about it. But so I don't want to fixate on the notion of harm too much. But
Right.
anyway, it doesn't really matter, because the point is it's even narrower than that, because I'm just talking about justice in particular. So what I mean by justice, right, is something vague, and it doesn't really matter what the theory of justice is, and can explain why I think it doesn't really matter, but just for the sake of it, what I mean by justice here is something objective. It's not pinned to a specific legal system of a particular time and place or anything, right? I'm talking
Right.
about some concept of like natural justice, something like that, where you can kind of tell instinctively when somebody is kind of not getting what's due to them, right? Or getting what's due to somebody else or something. And right, we understand that mismatch to be a notion of injustice. So if you steal my money and just walk off with it, people will think, no, that's not right. Like that, it doesn't belong to you. You don't deserve that. That should be for the other person. There's some notion of like what's owed to somebody, which we kind of like can intuitively grasp at least some aspects of that. Right? That's what I mean by justice. And I think that a good being wouldn't just sort of look the other way if sort of gratuitous instances of injustice were going on that they could sort out without any
Right.
difference to them. They wouldn't just allow untold injustices to go on. So it's a bit like the problem of evil, but in particular, I'm just narrowing the focus down. So I'm really just interested in the notion of justice for this.
So
What's going on here?
justice when it comes to dealing with individuals, you would say that justice is that people get what they deserve
That's the core idea.
in accordance with in accordance with what they do. So if a person doesn't, your instance, someone comes along and steals your money, you would say an injustice has been done to you. So
Well,
there's
that
something,
shows you the basic imbalance that goes on, but
Right,
justice is an attempt to correct that balance. So what you might do is
Right.
like catch the criminal and make him give back the money, and thereby
Right.
doing justice is done. And what does that mean? It means it restores the imbalance about somebody having or not having something that's owed to them, right?
So you take
justice is a kind
a
of corrective
classic.
element towards that.
So you would look at, generally across history, when we look across history, justice is always seen in sense of scales. So I
Okay.
mean, cross culturally, justice is always represented by scales, and the scales representing society and keeping things in balance. You want
Oh,
to
you mean
balance,
scales like a weighing scales?
right?
Yeah,
Right, like
okay,
weighing in the
fine.
scales. So I'm with you there. I wanted to make sure that we're in that I'm understanding your position.
Cool. Yeah. So that's my idea that I've got going on.
So in your post under original sin, let's just
Mhm.
deal with original sin. You said, second paragraph under the heading original sin, is unjust to blame someone for something that another person did.
Yes, right.
Okay, so and I would agree that it is unjust to, if you're, let's say you have a twin brother,
Mhm.
and your twin brother stole someone else's money.
Mhm.
It would be unjust to hold you accountable for what your twin brother did. That's
Right.
correct.
That's my idea. Yeah.
Hang on just 1 second. I had to hope that worked.
Mhm.
So you don't want to be blamed for something someone else did. You seem to assume that in original sin that you are blamed for what Adam did.
Mhm. Well, that's like one simple way of thinking about what's going on. I think that the Christian notion of original sin is interpreted in different ways by different people. So you might have a different idea about it, but I'm not even sure. From my point of view, it's not even clear that there's any one like true meaning of it. I mean, I'm not a Christian,
Well,
right? So I don't think
well,
any of it's
right.
true.
You're
but-
not a Christian. I'm not saying, but
yeah, but like for you to start saying, well, that's not what it means. Maybe I'm anticipating this, but like as if there's some true notion of what original sin is. I'm interested to know what your notion of original sin is, but like,
well, my
I'm not so
notion,
interested in like couching it in terms of what the correct interpretation is. But if you've got an interpretation that escapes the argument, I'm interested in knowing what that's like.
that's one of those things I went to, and as I noted, I went and looked at three basic sources, which are kind of classically, historically, which most people could go and look at and get a definition of. I went and looked at the Roman Catholic Catechism. I went and looked at the Heidelberg Catechism, which is one of the older Reformed, and then I went to the 1689 Baptist Confession of Faith. I went and looked at all three of those, and I compared their definitions. Their
Okay.
definition, how they parse terms is a little different, but it's all the same fact. That original sin is not that you were held responsible for Adam's actions. I would argue that's a misunderstanding on your part. And so I would fault you in saying that you created something of a misrepresentation of your audience by not going and looking and seeing what. Now you can say, well, that there's kind of it's true that there's a broad spectrum of what that means, but it all generally comes down to is that Adam's sin starting out has an effect. Now that effect plays out in different. You can argue about how different Christian traditions understand that effect. I mean, even Eastern Orthodox would the Eastern traditions would look at it different than the Western traditions. I'm from a Western tradition, so I'm going to speak from my tradition. And my tradition sees the effect of Adam's sin going through all humanity is that by his violation, he separated man from God's presence. Now, what that means is, as I explained, actually, I quoted Louis Berkhoff on this, that the sin of Adam carried pollution with it. So in that sense, which you can kind of look at, like I said, I gave 3 different traditions. They all seem to pick up on that same idea.
Okay,
Now,
so I understand the idea, right? Do you mind?
Okay.
So I understand the idea. Let me see if I can summarize it so we're on the same page, right? Your idea is that it's not that we inherit moral blameworthiness as a result of Adam's sin, right? It's that we inherit a fucking fallen nature as a result, right? Corrupted, sinful nature. Is that right?
That is one aspect of it. And what was the first part you said? It kind of broke up when you.
I said it's not just that like he's blaming us, right? It's not just that like we are blameworthy because of Adam's sin. It's just
Right.
that we've got a corrupted nature because of Adam's sin. That's the inheritance of the sin. It's what you said. It's the effect, right?
Right. And
Okay.
and I
So as
think
long
I
as we're on
need
the
to,
same page, like I just
and
checking we're on the same page, if that's all right.
and
So
I
then,
need to, and there's a term in there that often gets misunderstood, and that's
Mhm.
that word nature. In biblical terms, nature is always related to function. So like let's say a claw hammer. A claw hammer has a defined nature. It has a function. And if you try to do something outside of that thing's function, you violate its nature. So we often talk about human nature, and we try to, and when we do that, modern Western kind of influenced by Aristotelian thought, we don't think of nature in terms of function. We think of nature in terms of substance, what something is made of, not what it's made for. So the biblical concept of nature is always about function, about what the thing is made for, its purpose in existence.
Wait, sorry. So are you saying that after Adam's sin, the kind of telos of the human race was changed, like what it was for, its purpose or whatever, it changed?
Correct. So that in Adam's fall,
So wait, what
man's
is human nature for? What's the telos of of humanity? What do you
to
mean?
know
I don't know
God
what
and
you mean.
enjoy Him forever.
Well, what was it before the fall then?
To know God and enjoy Him forever. That
Well, what was it
that
after the fall then? You said it changed because of the fall.
the all right. So here again. So you take a plate out of the cabinet. You put it's clean when you take it out of the cabinet. Correct. You hope it's clean.
Okay.
You put food on it. You eat the food off of it. It's now considered dirty. So that plate cannot serve. You can't take that plate and sit it on the counter for 3 days and expect that plate to, while it has a defined function for holding and serving food, let's say, that the function of it has now become corrupted by accretions to it.
Wait.
Those
Hold
accretions,
on. Look, the function of a plate is to put food off it and eat the food that's on there. And if it's
right?
dirty, that doesn't actually change the function of the plate. It just means it's not very good at playing that function. Right? It's
Correct.
still a
And
plate. It's still for food, right? So its
right,
nature, its telos, hasn't changed just because it's
it's
dirty,
right,
right?
but its
So what do
ability
you mean then
for
with what do you mean then with human nature? Yeah, I just don't think you mean to say that after Adam's sin, our telos changed. Because that's like saying when the plate is dirty, it's not for food anymore. And that's silly. It's still for food. It's just not very good at doing it. You could
right.
say our nature, our telos is to be with God, but we're just now, because we've got this fallen nature, we're just not very good at kind of realizing that. That makes sense, but it's not to say that the telos has changed. That would be wrong. Telos has stayed the same. It's just that worse at achieving that end now because
That's
of the
correct.
inheritance.
We,
Okay,
we,
so
we,
that
we
is what you mean, right?
so yeah, that's where I'm going.
So we've
So the,
inherited this corrupted nature. I understand the concept, right? But here's my question: like, how does that actually avoid the argument that I made? Because it seems to me what I'm saying is Adam does something that's nothing to do with me, what he does, right?
right.
But now
You,
I've inherited this. I'm like a dirty plate now because of what Adam did. But
right.
why should I be a dirty plate? What's that got to do with me? Right?
Well,
I don't see what difference it makes. It's like you're saying God doesn't blame you. It's just that he's made you wear this like corrupted nature for your entire life. Right?
well,
Like, how does that make it better? That's still unjust, isn't it? Like, I'm
that's
wearing this fallen nature because of what somebody else did. It's like he's punishing me for what somebody else did. That kind of feels worse, if anything.
well.
Do you see what I
Here
mean?
again, this requires understanding the we start in the beginning. The scripture starts in the beginning, and in the beginning, man is placed in the garden. He is placed in God's presence.
Sorry,
He
do you
is
mind
made
before we go back to all of this? I just wanted to check that you understood the point that I made, and then you can say
right,
anything you
right.
like
I,
after that.
I
But
understand
I
the
just want
point.
you to understand what I'm saying is that, like, what I'm complaining that there's an injustice, that God blames people for Adam's sin. It sounds like what you're saying is he doesn't blame them. He just like gives them this corrupted nature because of Adam's sin. And like as a rebuttal, it doesn't really work because like that's just as clear a case of injustice as what I was saying original sin was. Right? You're like clarifying the meaning of original sin, but in such a way as to not avoid the objection. Do you
Well,
understand what I'm saying?
right. Again, you're assuming that God is holding you responsible for
But
Adam's sin, and that's not what's happening at all.
I'm saying that he's giving me a corrupted nature because of Adam's sin, which is what
No,
you were saying.
he isn't giving you this nature. The nature that he has given every person, every human being, is to know him and enjoy him forever.
Well, what happened because
What
of Adam's sin?
what Adam did in his sin drove a wedge of separation between humanity and God.
Okay, but pause a second. Couldn't God just like restore that gap by just his, all-powerful kind
He
of?
did in Christ.
But couldn't he have just done that anyway? Couldn't he have just said, okay, everyone else apart from Adam is not blamed, like, is not given this corrupted nature, right? Why he could have done that, couldn't he?
And again, I understand you're still trying to hold to your definition, and I'm speaking from you're trying to make your definition consistent. Now,
My definition of what?
your assumption is that we are held responsible for Adam.
No, I'm saying
We're
let's
not,
move to your model where we say it's not about responsibility. It's just about inheriting a corrupted nature,
okay,
right?
so as I was explaining, going back to my plate analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have the plate. It's gotten dirty. It's no longer. It still has its initial telos, its initial function, its initial nature. That nature has become unclean. It has become polluted. It has become soiled. Now you take that one plate that's already dirty and you put it put it back in the cupboard without cleaning it. It begins to corrupt everything in that cabinet. And you may not see it at first, but that initial that corruption that's on there begins to corrupt other things around it. It's like it's a crack in the dam essentially. Eventually, it's going to spread, and it eventually affects everyone and everything in some way. It doesn't affect everyone the same way, but nonetheless, the corruption is there, and it will express itself.
Okay, so let's just say sin is like you can contract it, right, from being close to other people who are sinful. But so what? I don't understand what this has got to do with it. Sorry, you've lost me. I thought we were talking about, right, the version of original sin I came up with. You said that's not correct because there's a different notion of what original sin is, which is that it's not about blameworthiness, but it's about inheriting a corrupted nature, right?
Correct.
But I don't understand what difference it makes if if that corrupted nature is like going to spread to other people? Doesn't everybody have it anyway? I mean,
Yeah,
isn't that
everyone
by
has it.
definition everybody has it? Right. So what's it like? What's the point of the analogy where you say if you put a dirty plate with a clean plate, it makes the clean plate dirty? I mean, what's
Correct.
the clean plate here? Everybody's got in original sin anyway, so there's no clean plates, are there?
Exactly. That's the point.
So what's the point? I don't understand what. I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, it's and that every analogy eventually breaks down. So we have to the understanding how contamination works. I think COVID was probably a very good, you literally did not know you had it. Some people didn't know they had it until they were tested, and even then, sometimes because the tests were kind of goofy or whatever, undependable. You might have had it. I'll give you a perfect example to kind of. My wife had full blown COVID. I didn't. I knew I had it because I lost my sense of taste and smell, but I never. She ran fever for days on end. She had lung problems. This corruption manifests itself in different ways. A lot of times you don't know you have it until you go to the doctor and get tested for it. So if you're told, hey, you've got this problem, this thing that Adam brought something out into the population and it began to spread through the population.
Okay, I get it. Adam, it's the one who corrupted everybody else, and we caught it like an infectious disease from him, right? That's what you're saying. Right, okay. But here's my question, right? Like, God could prevent that disease from spreading through the population,
Yeah,
right?
he could have. He could
Okay,
have killed
but he
Adam.
didn't. Right, okay, but he didn't. So, because he chose for me to not be protected against the disease, even though he could have done, he's like the guy who watches the kid drown and just doesn't bother to do anything to help him, right? But put that to one side. The point is, he must have looked at me and thought, nah, I won't bother, right? He's all knowing. He knew I was going to inherit this corrupted nature, and he has the power to prevent me from inheriting it. There's nothing to stop him just saying, do you know what? No, let's just let him not have a corrupted nature. He just didn't do that. And I'm saying that's unjust because I didn't do anything to deserve that, right? How could I? It happened like, the moment I was conceived or something. I inherit this fallen nature. But I was blameless at that point.
Right.
There was no reason to do that, and he just did it anyway, and that's unjust. So my argument just seems to be like I can just rephrase the argument.
Well, then again, you're assuming that here's the problem. You're assuming that is what you're being judged on, and it's not.
I'm not. I'm just saying he could have done something about it. He knew about it, right? But he chose not to do anything, right? And that's unjust.
He did do something about it.
What did he do about it? He didn't prevent me from having the. But he didn't prevent me from having the fallen nature. It's like saying, look, okay, there's a kid drowning over there. I kind of, I like looked at my phone. I thought about phoning for help, but I just carried on walking. That's better than nothing. Like, no, he could have saved the kid, right? Anything short of that is not doing the perfectly good thing, right? It doesn't matter. So he sent some guy to maybe help me or something, but I'm obviously not saved. But he could have just said, okay, just don't have that fallen nature. And if he's an omnibenevolent dude, why would he do the second best thing or the 50th best thing?
Okay, let's go back. Okay, let's go back to your question. Let's go back to the start here. All right, so your argument was that what God should have done was kill Adam.
Kill Adam? No, where did you get that from?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. See, let's go. You go back to Genesis 1 or Genesis 2 and 3. When Adam is placed in the garden, he's given one command: do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So
here's what God should have done.
So he says you can eat of every tree except this one. If you eat of it, surely you will die.
Okay, and then he did, right?
So when Adam eats of the tree, for justice to be done, God should have executed Adam on the spot. That's what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well,
I don't really
if you're,
understand.
and
Listen,
here's the thing. Here's the thing. I agree with that premise. If that's what God's intentions were,
hold on,
if
you're going off onto the deep end here a bit, mate. I'm sorry, but like, I don't understand. So listen, if you want my view, right? You just told me
yeah,
my view was that he should have killed Adam. You didn't actually ask me to explain my view about that in any way, right?
well,
I don't understand why eating an apple is such a bad thing. Right? It's obviously an allegory. It's not supposed to be taken literally. But if
right,
you
it's
think
not
that
meant
like
to be.
eating an apple is a bad thing, then the just thing to do would be to just say nothing because it's completely morally irrelevant, right? But I don't really understand what the allegory is supposed to even be. Like, what's he getting punished for? I mean, if it's not literal, if it's not an actual tree that's cursed by some magic or something, what are you actually saying? I don't even understand it. It's something about like it's supposed to be a kind of like don't get pretenses for being, above your station. So I just don't even understand it. But look, the point is, whatever it wasn't anything to do with me, was it? So why should it have an impact on me at all? Right?
Or
Any impact at all is unjust, and a perfect being could just make that injustice go away, and he doesn't. That's the problem.
well, if he did, he'd have to kill everyone.
Why would he have to kill him? Why doesn't he just forgive Adam and just wipe the
He
slate
did
clean?
forgive Adam.
Well,
He
cool. I
allowed
mean, why
Adam.
is he
He allowed
punishing me
Adam.
then? Why
He
am I
allowed
punished?
Adam outside of the garden to
Listen, bud,
continue
I
to
don't think you're
interact with him.
tracking what I'm saying. Like, what difference does it make? Why didn't he just say, you know what, Adam? Forget it. I don't mind. I'm a big boy. Who cares? Like, chill. Like, why didn't he just say that? That seems like it would be a much nicer thing to do. Instead of being like, whatever, you have to kick out of you're not allowed to live in the Garden of Eden. Everyone else, including me, thousands of years later, has to like shoulder some corrupted nature. That sounds like bullshit, man. Why would he be heavy like that? Perfect being could just be chill about it instead. And actually, isn't Jesus all about like loving,
Well, wait a second. Wait a
turning
second.
the other cheek and being
Wait a
forgiving
second.
and
Wait a
stuff?
second.
But God's
Wait a
like
second.
way more petty than that.
We're getting so in God's omnibenevolence, you would argue that justice is part of that. So
Yeah,
God is
I think so. Yeah.
you're saying that. So I'm like I said, I'm trying to understand what your argument is here. Are
hmm
you saying that in God's omnibenevolence and His justice, because you said, well, He should have just forgiven Adam. Well, sometimes
He could have
forgiveness.
done.
And I would say that He did forgive Adam, but He didn't let Adam's actions go without consequence. Adam's actions had to have consequences.
Okay, Adam's actions should have had consequences for Adam, right? Why should Adam's
Right.
actions have consequences for me?
They don't have consequences for
They
you.
do. I've inherited a fallen nature because of Adam's actions, right? How can you
Yes,
say they don't have consequences for me?
Adam's actions have consequences.
For me?
One of those consequences
Wait, hold on. For me, right?
is right.
He has
The
consequences for
consequence,
me.
right. The consequence of Adam's action is that man is separated from God.
Okay, but how is that fair? What's it got to do with me? What Adam did? That's now I'm separated from
Well,
God.
now we're getting into something. Now we're getting into it. Now we're getting into something you wanted. So it's you were saying you were questioning God's justice. Now your question is fairness. Fairness and
It's the
justice
same thing. I mean, it's the same
are
thing.
two different.
Okay,
No.
I meant them in the same way. I didn't mean a different concept. I'm just saying how is
Okay.
that just, right?
So here's the thing. We're getting into fairness and justice are not the same thing. Justice has to do with getting what you deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Fairness has to do with treating everyone equally.
All right, forget fairness. I meant justice, right? I used the
Okay,
two
so the
synonymously, but whatever.
just thing for God to have done to Adam when Adam did whatever it was he did, however you want to catch that, God should have killed Adam.
Well, I mean, whatever. Let's say God should have done the appropriate thing to him. I'm like, we're just talking about whether or not I think he should be killed for eating an apple. But like,
here's the
let's
thing.
say you think that, and that's true, right? It's got nothing to do with me, does it? I shouldn't be punished in any way, right? Should I?
You
Because
aren't.
of Adam. I am.
You
I've
aren't.
inherited a fallen nature.
Well, that's not punishment. That's just an
That's a
effect.
bad thing, isn't it?
Well,
I don't want that.
I would argue it's bad, but it's not.
Okay.
It's not. You say, well, that's not my fault. Okay, it's not your fault that you were given. Let's say when you were born, you were given $100.
Okay.
Okay, so that you were given $100, but
Okay.
you can't spend it until you're like 21, and it's just sitting there. All it is $100. It's sealed up in an envelope in the thing. You can't spend it until you're 21. But let's say whatever you're wanting when you're at 21 costs more than that $100. All right, so if you're going, so you look at that $100 and you say, okay, what can I do with this so that I can afford what I want? Well, you've got a couple options there. You can either not get what you want, which costs more than that $100, or you can go buy something similar but costs $100. Or your options are to go out and rob from someone else to get to multiply that, to add to it so you'll get what you want. So in a sense, what your two options are in this analogy, you've given this $100 came from your grandfather Adam as an inheritance. So you've inherited something, and you may not want it. You may not want the $100. That's fine. It's still your inheritance. That's what you got from him.
Can I change the analogy a bit? Right.
Okay.
It's because it's like I have inherited like a debt of $100 from Adam. It's not $100 is good, right? Even if you want something that's worth $1,000, I still want the $100 because then I'm only 900 away from what I want, right? It's not like I go, oh, I wish I didn't have this 100 because I want something that's worth 1,000, right? So it's not analogous because I'm saying I wish I didn't have this fallen nature because it would have been much better to just have like Adam before the fall and not have a fallen nature, right? Like, so that's just like having no money in the bank rather than minus £100. Your analogy doesn't really work. You're making it seem like my inheritance from Adam is good, but not just not quite good enough. Actually, my inheritance from Adam is shit, right? It's a broken, sinful, corrupted nature. It's nothing good about it. It's not like $100. It's like minus $100. I come in hobbled. I'm supposed to run a race, and my shoelaces have been tied together. It's not fair, or it's not just, right? That's what I'm inheriting. So there's no point trying to spin an analogy where I get like quite a nice cheeseburger, but it's not the double decker I wanted, right? Doesn't work like that. I've been given a shit sandwich when I wanted a cheeseburger, right? That's the analogy. And it's not just. I haven't done anything to deserve that. That's my point. God could have fixed it so that I didn't inherit a shit sandwich that I didn't deserve, but he didn't. And that means that he's embodying a sense of injustice that surely a perfect being wouldn't do. Why would he give me a shit sandwich when I don't deserve it, right? That's unjust.
Well,
that's my critique.
Again, you're saying, well, I don't. And again, I'm saying you're not getting that. You're not being held responsible for Adam.
Hold on, dude. I've said a couple of times. We've moved on from the whether it's just about inheriting blame. I'm saying I inherit a sinful, corrupted nature. Right, so there's no point saying what I really mean is about blame. I'm being really explicit. I'm not saying that because I just adopt your view, which is original sin is about effect. It's about having a corrupted nature. So I don't want to have to correct that again because I've already said it about 4 times. So do you understand? I'm following along with your definition here, and I'm saying the argument runs anyway.
So your objection is. I'm just trying to make sure that, but here's what I say. You're still trying to say that you're being held responsible for something someone else did. I'm saying you're not. I'm saying you're feeling the effects of this.
Yeah, that's what I'm complaining about. You think I've inherited a sinful, corrupted nature because of Adam's sin, right?
I think we all have.
But that's your view. I'm just getting you to confirm that's what you think, isn't it? It's a yes or no.
Yes.
You think we inherited a corrupted nature.
My nature, because of Adam. And again, we've said when we talk about nature, we're talking about function. What something is meant to do. That function has been corrupted.
Sorry, it's not the function, right? The
Because
plate is still to be. You're still supposed to
the
put food on
plate
a
is
plate,
still
even
the
if it's
plate.
dirty, right? It's not about the function, right? It's not about the telos, right? It's not about the end of the plate, right? I still have the same purpose as I did before the fall, right? The
Right.
point is, I've just got a shitty, corrupted nature that makes me less good at realizing that purpose, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
Now,
good,
you
exactly.
can
So I've summarized
now
my
you
view,
can
and you said
say
exactly.
you can say that's not fair,
Yeah, it isn't.
and that may be the case, but that doesn't change the fact. You say, well, it's not fair that I have this.
Mhm.
Well, okay, you're saying, well, how do I change this?
No, I'm
And
I'm not. I'm not saying how do I change it. I don't need the like you need to pray and be a good boy or whatever. I don't need to hear any of that. I'm saying it shows that
Mhm.
Christianity isn't true, right? Because Christianity presupposes that there's a perfect being, but a perfect being wouldn't feed
Mm-hmm.
me a shit sandwich on the day I was born, because that's unjust. I haven't done anything to deserve that. So that
Well,
shows
God
you that
hasn't done
Christianity is
that to you.
false. He has. I've got you.
God hasn't
Sorry,
done that to you.
I don't. We just went over this. You think that because of Adam's sin, I inherited a sin from
Right.
nature, right? God could have
Right.
prevented that, but he didn't. So he's allowed
Yeah, he
me
could
to
have
pick
killed
up a
Adam.
shit sandwich. He could have just whatever he did with Adam. Who cares what he did with Adam? I'm saying he didn't have to let me have a corrupted nature. Even if Adam did his sin, he could have just said, "Well, Alex, that was nothing to do with him, so I'm not going to give him a shit sandwich just because Adam did something I didn't like." Right? Why would he do that? Doesn't make any sense. I've got nothing to do with Adam's sin, but I'm holding a shit sandwich now because of Adam's sin. That's what I'm complaining
You're
about.
again, you're complaining about you're complaining about what you've inherited from
Yeah,
Adam. The
yeah.
only thing Adam had to give you once he got kicked out of the garden was his nature, which he allowed to become corrupted. So you're blame. What I'm saying is you're blaming the wrong person, and rather than saying, okay, this is what. So you have there's what you inherited from Adam was this corruption of your telos,
Okay, look.
of
You're
your
trying to tell me that
function.
I should blame Adam and not God, but I'll tell you why that doesn't work, right? Imagine you're at like you're a teacher in a school, right? And at playtime, all the little kids are running around, and then one of them catches fire, right? And he's on fire, and he's running up to the other kids, and they're catching fire because they're like bumping into him and stuff, right? You could stop it. You're holding a fire extinguisher. But you just go, well, it's not really me, is it? It's not my fault they're on fire. It's the first kid who was on fire. It's his fault, right? That's what you're saying is I should blame the first kid who was on fire, not the fact that the teacher standing there with the fire extinguisher who could put people out but isn't doing it. I'm blaming him. That's what I'm specifically saying is it doesn't matter if one guy was on fire first. Who cares about that? I'm specifically saying the guy who could fix it but isn't. In particular, I'm blaming him for that. I'm saying he's not just, is he? He's not a perfectly good being. Right? It doesn't matter. Even if I should apportion some blame to the first kid who was on fire, but completely beside the point whether I do that or not. Because even if I do, I'm still going to hold some portion of blame towards the omnipotent being that could put the fire out, but isn't doing
Okay,
so. Right?
let me back this up to you. Okay, so I like this analogy because I think it captures what's going on. But let's say the first kid that caught on fire. Let's say that he was playing with that he found a lighter and was playing with it, and that's how he caught on fire, and that's how he transmits the fire to other people. Indeed, you can say that let's say you were the second kid that caught on fire. You're being burnt. Your injuries are the result of his actions. Your injuries are not the result of the teacher's. Indeed, the teacher may come along with the fire extinguisher and put you out. Here's the thing: you still now have to deal with those burns that you've experienced.
No, listen though, but look, to make the analogy correct, right? I mean, you say maybe that comes along after. I mean, God's always there, right? And he's all-knowing and he's omnipotent. So he's not like he's afterwards. He just notices and comes along as quickly as possible. He could have put the fire out immediately, right? Even if he lets Adam get burnt, he could have just made it so that he doesn't infect anyone else. I mean, after all, they didn't play with the lighter, right? So,
Right.
and I would expect actually that if the teacher was there directly looking at the time and sees fucking Jimmy burn himself with the lighter, comes running towards little Alex, that of course he would stop him. He wouldn't just say, "Oh, I don't know, let's let a few of them bump into each other. Maybe I'll send somebody, to help them later or something." He wouldn't do any of that. He would just stop the fire. He wouldn't let anyone else get infected, right? Probably wouldn't even let little Jimmy burn himself. But whatever. I mean, maybe he thinks little Jimmy's got to learn his lesson. He certainly doesn't think I've got to learn a lesson because little Jimmy played with the lighter. Right? Your analogy doesn't help you. It just gives another way of
Well,
me
it's your
framing the problem.
analogy. It was your analogy. I just
Yeah.
corrected the direction of it. That it what you're arguing is that that atoms, again, you're assuming that every person that exists uh, without contact, without, they exist as an island unto themselves, and the
They do
reality is we
exist as a
don't.
moral island unto themselves. Of course they do. They're not responsible for something that other people do. Of course.
And
They
now,
are in
and
responsibilities terms. That's how it works.
are you a parent?
No.
Okay, I think having kids kind of fixes this. As a parent, speaking as a parent, there is a sense where, as a parent, I recognize that there's only so much I can protect my kids from. If I protect them from too much, they can basically not function in the world. If I protected them from every bad experience, even my parents, they let me bump into things in the world, and I've got the scars to prove it. I've been shot, stabbed, and run over, before I was 20 years old. So, my parents did not protect me from every bad experience. I can't fault them for that. My experiences in that situation made me better. So sometimes as a parent, watching my kids, I would watch them do something. I go, yeah, there's a valuable lesson they need to learn here. And that lesson is either things hurt, there's things that you need to take responsibility for, or that there are, always there's consequences for your actions.
Yeah. Look, I agree this point, and I don't think
So
I need to be a parent to understand that concept actually. But look, I understand that there are consequences of your actions, but we're talking about consequences for somebody else's actions, right? I didn't
right,
do the thing that meant that I have the sinful, corrupted nature, did I? So how am I learning a lesson? How is
right.
that even relevant? That's just
Well,
you just changed. You made an analogy that's got nothing to do with it. If here's a parental analogy for you that fits, right? Imagine you have a scan of your newborn baby, right, or preborn baby. Turns out it's got like a disease that could be cured with a completely harmless, 100% safe procedure, right? But you just go, nah, fuck it. Let's just let them have the disease, right? That is a harm. You're not being a good person by doing that, right? That's bad. It's unjust. Certainly, that kid has not done anything to deserve that. You could have easily alleviated that suffering, but you just chose not to. That's what we're talking about. He's inheriting a disability, which is basically analogous to me inheriting a sinful, corrupted nature. But they didn't do anything to deserve that. But in really, you're letting it happen is a mark against you because it's bad to do that. Certainly, as a parent, it would be bad to do that. So that's the analogy that makes sense to me here, if we want to actually characterize what I'm talking about. It's not like letting them bump into stuff and learning what the world is like. That's completely different. That's what happens after you get born. And I'd have no problem with that necessarily, right? Like, if we're all born equal and we just make our own way and we get punished for the stuff that we do bad, fine, fair enough. I'd understand that because then I'd be living out, responsibility for my own actions. But if I'm born into the world with like effectively a disability because like Adam did something thousands of years ago, that's not just. That's messed up. It's like I'm being, I have to live with a bad consequence, right? That's bad for me, but I didn't do anything to justify that. Do you understand?
right. And again, this is where I think you're using two terms. You're trying to use two different terms simultaneously. You keep talking about justice, but then you seem to be assuming fairness, that somehow God is obligated to be fair to you.
God is obligated to be fair to me in virtue of being good, right? You don't have to be nice to your kids, but if you're not nice to them, then you're not a good person, right? That's just how it works. If he wants to be good, he has to do good stuff. It's not like he owes me because I'm some special person. He owes me because he's good, right? He should be nice to me because he's perfect. It's not like, right? Doesn't that just follow from being perfect? Being morally perfect?
Well, I would argue that being good and being nice are two different things.
Well, but at least like not letting me inherit a disability for no reason, right? Whether that's not nice, it doesn't really matter. But that's still the morally good
You're
thing.
assuming that there's no reason. There's no reason for it.
Well, the reason seems to be just that because Adam did something, but that's not morally relevant to whether I should have this, right? I didn't do anything. It's nothing to do with me, right? I'm being given a fallen nature because somebody else fucked up, right? That's not just,
right.
is it?
Somebody else messed up. Mm-hmm. You're feeling you feel the effects of it. You are not. So this is, we're talking cause and effect. You're mm-hmm. feeling the effect of someone else's action. You say, well, that's not fair.
Yeah.
Okay. This again goes back to what I argued in my piece, where I went to Ezekiel 18, and here you have people who are making the same argument you're making. God, you're not treating us fairly, and God says, okay. All right, so here's the deal. You do right. I'll deal with you as you are. You do good. You will get a good result. If you do evil, you will get an evil result. If someone has been doing evil, let him stop doing evil so that good can result. If someone who has been doing good starts doing evil, he'll feel the consequences of it.
Yeah, but hold on, that just ignores the fact that they've got corrupted natures, doesn't it? Because it's like him saying, oh, I'll judge you on your efforts, right? But you obviously, because no fault of your own, you've inherited a sinful, like a disposition towards sin. It's like saying, yeah, if you win the race, you can have the medal. But, I've tied your shoelaces together. So but I'm still going to just judge you on how good you do in the race, right? I'm not I'm not just going to say you came last before you try and run. I'll let you try and run. Right. But obviously you won't be able to win because I've tied your shoelaces together. But I'll just judge you fairly. And if you lose the race, you'll go to hell. It's like, can you not see what I'm saying? That it's not about, that Ezekiel thing is completely missing the point. It's like God saying, I'll treat you fairly after he's hobbled you. Like when Commodus used to fight gladiators or whatever, but he'd poison them first so that they wouldn't stand a chance, right? That's not fair. Right. That's not just, right? That's not the balance of everything working out properly. That's like him saying, I'll let you try and get into heaven.
That you're see, that's Adam's mistake. Adam thought he could be equal with God.
I'm not saying I can be equal with God. When did I say that?
Well, I mean, I'm just.
I didn't say anything like that.
By looking at by pointing out the fact that God that Commodus had to hobble his opponents so that they couldn't compete with him.
Yeah, I'm not competing with God, am I? I'm competing with other people. And the point is just that I'm going to probably fail and be corrupted and sinful because I've got this corrupted nature. But I didn't need to have that. I could have just been pure like Adam was before the fall, right? And if I was, then I wouldn't have been anywhere near as likely that I would have been given into sin, right? It would have been way less likely that I'd have gone, well, because isn't that the difference between having a pure nature and having a sinful one, right? A disposition towards sin. That's what I've got. That's what a corrupted nature is, right?
Mm-hmm. And why do you?
So
the Christian argument is that the reason why you have that is because of Adam.
Yeah, and that's messed up.
And you're saying okay. So you're saying I'm starting this race already hobbled.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fine. That doesn't excuse you from running the race.
No, it doesn't. What it does, I'm not saying that it excuses me from running the race.
I can say that.
What am I saying about
as someone? I can say that as someone who has physical disabilities, that I'm already at a loss.
Sure, but look, I'm not saying I can't run the race, or I'm not telling you, right? What am I saying? See if you can say what my idea is.
All
Like,
right,
what do you think my idea is?
That's where I'm trying to. You're still coming back to the fact that you are feeling the effect of Adam's sin.
Yes, I am saying that. What am I saying about that? What's my point about that?
So you're saying it's unfair that you're feeling that effect.
Why am I saying that? What's my reasoning for that?
Well, that's a good question. Why are you saying that's unfair?
So you don't understand that bit of you don't understand why I'm saying that.
Well, I've been in a chain reaction car accident. It wasn't fair that I got hit.
Mm-hmm.
But
Of course.
I felt the effect of that wreck.
Okay.
And so I can say that there was, it was and while it was unfair that I felt that, I nonetheless felt that effect. Me feeling that effect has nothing to do with whether it is fair or not.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think I'm saying if it's unfair, then it could, like, if it was unfair, then you wouldn't feel the effect?
That's what I'm thinking. That's where I'm going. You're saying it's unfair that I'm suffering an effect of an action that someone else has committed.
Yeah. So I am saying obviously that it's unfair, and it is unfair that you were in a car crash that wasn't your fault. You didn't cause that car crash. It's not like you deserved it. It's bad luck, right? You didn't. It's unfair, and I feel sorry for you. I mean, like, I don't know how serious it was. I don't even know you in any way, but I feel bad for you if you were injured and it was somebody else's fault, right? Of course, that's unfair, right? So we agree on that. But surely you must think I'm saying more than that, right?
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to get at. What is unfair about you feeling that effect?
Well, what's unfair about you being in the car crash? Why is that unfair?
I said it felt unfair. That
Okay, so
doesn't
why
mean
then?
it.
Why did it feel unfair?
Because I was suffering from someone else's bad decision. The girl who hit us was texting and driving.
And you were driving safely, right? You weren't like swerving across the road or anything. You were just minding your own business.
I was in traffic. I was minding my own business, and matter of fact, I was the last car in the line.
Okay, so you didn't do anything. It's not like you were being reckless or just bad luck or something. You just were minding your own business, and then someone else was texting, and they basically hit a car that hit you or whatever, right?
Right.
And the reason it's unfair is because you had a consequence that came out of it, but it wasn't because of you doing something. Right? It's not like you were taking drugs and accidentally had an overdose, and you might say, "Oh well, it was a consequence of their own corrupted behavior or something." You're just minding your own business, being a completely normal person, and yet a bad thing happens to you, right? And that's why it's unfair. Okay, and that's exactly what I'm saying about having a corrupted nature, right? The moment I'm conceived, my soul enters the universe, or whatever you think happens, I'm immediately given a sinful nature. And God is like the teacher with the fire extinguisher, who could have just said, no, actually, let's just let him not have a sinful nature, right? No cause and effect is too strong for God to overcome. So he could have overcome it and just made it that we don't have that inheritance from Adam, but he didn't. And what I'm complaining about isn't that I've got a corrupted nature necessarily, but I'm saying the fact that I've got it and it's unfair means that the God that let it happen couldn't be perfect, right? Because if he was perfect, he wouldn't let this happen, because he'd be like the teacher who just lets all the kids die in fire, and doesn't put them out, right? So that's my point.
Okay.
It's not cool to let me have a corrupted nature before I've even had the chance to do anything. But that's what he does. He does that to everybody because he lets everybody have this kind of consequence of Adam's sin.
You have come to the realization, like I did, in that instant in that car wreck where I felt the consequences. Me being a Christian, the consequences of me being in that position go all the way back to Adam. Adam's sin made contact at that point because she made the girl that started the wreck made a bad decision. She decided to text and drive rather than being focused on driving. So I felt so when we talk about original sin, we're talking about the ongoing effect of a chain reaction car wreck that goes through history. It's like a rock being thrown in the middle of a still pond. It goes out, and it has effects.
Okay, but look, the God could have prevented that from happening.
And
He could
whether
have let the
whether
pebble.
that's
Hold on. God could have just let the pebble go in the pond without there being any ripples, right?
I don't know. Is that physically possible?
Is it possible for God?
Well, that's not quite.
Obviously, it's possible for God. He can do miracles and everything, right? Obviously, that's possible. There's no point even like humming and hawing about it. Obviously, he could do that, and he could also prevent us inheriting fallen natures because Adam ate from an apple. Like, obviously, he could do that. There's no logical contradiction in saying Adam sinned and I don't have a fallen nature. That's not a contradiction. So logic isn't preventing him, and there's no causal force he couldn't overcome. So he could have just meant that we don't inherit the sin. The only reason we do is because he let it happen. It's obviously part of his plan. It's what he wants to happen, in fact. Unless, God's omnipotent, so everything that happens is what he wants to happen. Right? So he wants me to have a fallen nature. But I didn't do anything to deserve that. It's not like I was sinful. I mean, what had I done before I was born?
And nobody's claiming. And here's the thing: nobody's claiming that you do deserve it.
Well, God wants me to have it, right?
I would say no.
But why did he let it happen then? He's omnipotent and all-knowing.
Right.
And yet, what you're saying, he
knew
knows
it
about it,
happen,
wants me to not happen.
and he allowed it to happen.
He allowed it to happen, right? More than that, he wants it to happen.
So we're getting into things, so in a sense that you're saying you're feeling that it's not right that you feel that you suffer some consequence of Adam's action.
I'm saying it's not right that God lets that happen, right?
So again, we're missing the offended party here.
Well, Adam.
God is the offended party.
Well, okay, let's say God is like super annoyed at Adam, right? Is holding a grudge against Adam. Is holding a grudge against Adam and taking it out on me what you think a morally perfect being would do? Because that just sounds like a petty, kind of abusive, like parent figure, right? That's being a dick to the younger brother because the older brother stole a beer off him or something. Right? That doesn't.
Well, I would say that's kind of a misunderstanding of the analogy. But again,
sorry, go on.
All right. So let's say you invite someone over to your house. And you tell, and when they come in, you say, look, you can have anything, everything and anything in this house. You invite someone over to your house, just don't eat the chocolate pie. You don't explain, just say, look, whatever's in the cupboard, whatever's in the refrigerator, you're free to it. Just don't eat the chocolate pie. And they go, okay, that's fine. And you're over there, you're having a good time. You go out to go check the mail. When you come back, they're sitting at your kitchen table eating the chocolate pie. And you say, didn't I ask you to not eat that chocolate pie? And they look at you, well, you told me I could have whatever I wanted. I said, except the chocolate pie.
I get it.
All
so what's
right,
the idea
now,
then? That, like, it
so
would be
the condition of them staying at your house is that they don't eat the chocolate pie. They've eaten the chocolate pie. Now they got to go. So you just show them to the door and you close the door behind them. Look, sorry, I asked you not to eat that chocolate pie because maybe in your mind you had planned for that chocolate pie, a party in 3 nights where all of your friends are going to come over and y'all were going to divide up that chocolate pie. You didn't intend for him not to have any, but later you were going to have a party like the next night, and you were saving that chocolate pie for that night.
Yeah, but I'm waiting for the bit where, in this analogy, right? What happens?
Okay, so
when it
now,
punishes the
the
descendants of
party
those people for that action,
the party will be ruined. So you put you put this guest out and close the door behind him. And say, look, you've ruined it for everyone. Now I've got to cancel the party.
Yeah,
So
cool.
you
Do
put
you know
him
what's
out and you
going on,
close the
right?
door.
Somebody does an action and the person is holding them responsibility for the action that they do. I agree that that can be a case of justice, right? What I'm talking about is what about the descendants of that person shouldn't be punished because he ate the pie, right? Now, how does your analogy handle that? I don't understand. You're going to tell me that that's just.
Don't think of it as descendants. Just think of it as guests to the party, just random people, just start,
Yeah, but that just makes it different from the case in question because hold on. In actual fact, I'm a descendant of Adam. So why would we talk about like the other people at the party? The analogy doesn't make any sense if we think about it like that.
Well, here, so here again, you're thinking. You're thinking linearly rather than thinking collectively, and so this one person has ruined the party for everyone else, and this guy throws great parties. But now because this one person has ruined it, he's ruined it for everyone else.
Yeah, but look, I don't understand. Like, we can talk about the party if you like, but unless it's analogous to the case in question, which I'm saying it isn't, I don't really see what the point is. I mean, is it God, right? Can he just make another pie?
Yeah,
right?
yes,
Couldn't he just do that? If that's the analogous, all right, well, then he hasn't ruined the pie, has he? Because God can just make another pie. So, like, I don't even understand what this is doing. But if you don't want to make it analogous to the point in hand, what's the point of this?
I'm getting there. You just got to follow. Okay, so let's say again, he was making the chocolate pie. He ruined the party for everyone else, and the guy says, "That's it. I'm not having any more parties because this one guy he's ruined it for everybody." You look at the guy who did it, and you say, "You ruined it for." That's not fair. Why is he, being, we look at why are we being punished for what he did?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this friend has ruined your party. You don't want to have anything to do with anybody. You shut them out. You want to distance yourself from everyone. Possibly because you're angry over what happened. You're feeling this betrayal. You're feeling this hurt. So you shut everyone out, and they feel the effects of this person's actions because they really wanted to come to this party. We have been shut out of the party because of that. We have, and we're feeling the.
Could everyone mute their mics except for Alex and Trigger, please?
I'm not saying that God is a snowflake. I'm trying to make an analogy. Yes, God fixes the party. He set a new party. And he sent out invitations. Yes, I'm reading the chat.
But look, what I don't understand about any of these types of analogies, right? Okay. You're saying, look, Adam does something, right? The guy eats from the pie or whatever in the party, right? And then the consequences of that are that other people who didn't do that at the party have now there's no party or whatever. Because God just says, oh, you have no party now. Party's over. Everyone go home or something, right? But what the hell? Why didn't he just say, maybe he said, you know what, Adam, you've been a naughty boy, you should leave. But why didn't he just say, cool, everyone have a new pie. Here's a new pie, right? Because no causal influence, nothing that Adam does couldn't be overcome by God. So why would he cancel the party? It doesn't make any sense. Right? It doesn't make any sense, does it?
We say it doesn't make any sense.
I'm saying it doesn't make any sense. If I had a spare pie in the cupboard, I wouldn't just go, oh, party's over, everyone go home. I'd just get the new pie out and say, even if I blamed Adam, I wouldn't cancel the party. Why would I do that?
Well, I mean,
he could just make a new one, right?
Right. And let's say it takes it took years and years and years to make this pie. That you had
Why would we say that?
you
It's
had to
God.
source
He can do anything.
that you had to source the ingredients from all these exotic places to get the pie to what you wanted it to be.
But that's so then
this
it's
guy
not
comes
like
over
what it's
and,
like
and
with
ruins
God, then, is
it.
it?
Right.
But
Again,
what
like
are you
I said,
talking about? What are you talking about? How could God possibly have to spend ages making a pie? He could do anything he wants. He's omnipotent. What are you talking about?
Right.
What is he saying? Right, but I'm disagreeing with you. Like, it can't. Like,
You're
there's no point
disagreeing. You're
talking
disagreeing with me. You're.
Listen,
Again,
I'm
we're
saying
talking.
your analogy is you're saying, imagine God spent ages making the pie and he had to go and get the ingredients from all over town, and he was really upset when whatever. But how could that possibly apply to an omnipotent being? What are you talking about? How could that be analogous to anything that God could have done? If there's a Garden of Eden or anything, it's as easy for him to make that as anything else. Omnipotent.
Right.
So he couldn't spend all day making a pie, could he? It takes him a blink of an eye to make a pie. So what's the point of the analogy of like pretending that it takes God ages to do stuff?
Again, this is an analogy.
But it breaks down at the point that the exact point you're trying to make. You're saying, imagine he had to spend all day making it, but that couldn't apply to God. It's not just a fault of an analogy. It's like this analogy doesn't make sense in context. It distorts the very thing in question. Right? It's like if we were having a conversation about whether I could jump over a 6-foot-tall fence or something. And I said, well, imagine if I was a kangaroo. You go, yeah, okay, but in the respect of your jumping capabilities, you're not analogous to a kangaroo. So, it doesn't actually help you make the claim that you're 6 feet high by pretending you're a kangaroo, right? And there's no point saying, in this case, God could do anything he likes. There's no point saying, yeah, but imagine if he couldn't, and it would take him ages to make a pie. That's a completely pointless thing to speculate about, because part of the definition of God that we're working with, he's not like that, right?
Right. And I'm full. That is the point of analogy, is that at some point it breaks down, but nonetheless within the realm of human experience, which is where we live at, we have to look at where we are in our place. Yes, God can do anything that he wants to do, but he has in his omniscience, which we have to look at what God wants and how he gets what he wants. Now, and we have to look at this from outside. We're inside. We are seeing what is in our realm of experience. God's realm of experience is not like ours. So, could we say, did he create the, let's say he created the Garden of Eden in the blink of an eye, or he created the pie in the blink of an eye? That is from his perspective. Our perspective is completely different from God's.
Yeah, it took millions of years from our perspective, but it's just as easy for get one thing as it is to make another thing.
I'm not saying it was hard, which I mean it was because of what happened. But it doesn't change the fact that our experience is bounded by time.
Yeah, that's got nothing to do with it. I agree with you about that, but it's completely irrelevant. I'm not even talking about what it's. Maybe it looks like the world was difficult to make.
Well, I mean, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about.
No, I'm not.
I'm
not talking about what it's like from our point of view. No, I'm not. I'm talking about from God's perspective. Right? All I was saying was that there's no found it difficult to make a pie. right? Not because from the human perspective, such and such. That's got nothing to do with it. It's just because the definition of God we're working with is he's omnipotent. It's not from my perspective or anything. It's got nothing to do with it. I'm just saying you can't. There's no way out of that argument. Well, maybe he had to transmit the original sin from Adam to the rest of us because he was so super upset about how hard he'd spent, how much time he'd put in, and how annoyed he was that
I'm not talking
Adam
about
ruined
that.
the party. Well, your analogy was that Adam spoiled the party, and as a result of that, God got pissed off and said, "There's no party for anyone." Right? That was the point of what you were saying. Right. So, but I'm saying there's no version of that story where you can kind of bolster it by saying maybe the reason God was so upset was because he'd spent ages making the pie, because that doesn't make any sense in this context, right? Nothing that Adam could do
because
could make any difference to God.
I'm trying to analogize it. And Westerners don't get the point of Adam's actions from where they start from. We tend to isolate ourselves into our own feelings, our own, how am I being affected by this?
It's not that. That's not what I'm saying, right? I don't know why you are going to that after I've said this over and over again in this conversation. Like, I'm just saying, take me out of it, right? Just suppose somebody, let's say it's you, right, inherits a fallen nature. But that happened to you at the moment of conception, right? Okay, so there's never been a moment of time where you didn't have fallen nature, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not like it happened to you on your 16th birthday or something, right? You've always had that. So, but, right, that means that there's no way you could have done anything to deserve that, right? It's not because you're a bad person you've got a fallen nature. You're a bad person because, a bad person in the sense that you've got a fallen nature, because Adam did something. But what's that got to do with you? And you haven't addressed that problem. You're not really saying anything that's relevant to that, to be honest. Like, I don't understand what you could say that makes it me have to, deserve to have a fallen nature because of what Adam did. I just don't understand how you could possibly bridge that gap.
Well, this again goes back to, I have to keep bringing up these different analogies because we're talking about an effect.
Yeah, I'm saying the effect is me having the fallen nature. The blame effect distinction doesn't make any difference. I'm just accepting talking about effect.
Okay.
Right? There's no point going back.
The keyword you keep using is blamed.
Yeah, but that's because, right? The reason it comes back in is because the effect, it's hit me, right? Like a wave that's come downstream and it's bumped into me, right? But there's some dude who could have prevented the wave coming, right? And if he could have knew about it, was omnipotent and omnibenevolent, right? All I can say is the wave hit me, so it must be what he wants to happen. Because if he wanted it to not happen, it wouldn't have happened, right? So he wants that to happen. But if he's just, he must think that I deserve it. Because he wouldn't just let random bad things that he could prevent happen. Why? What do you mean?
Follow.
But isn't justice about people getting what they deserve? Like, it's obviously an injustice because I don't deserve it. I haven't done anything.
How do you know you don't deserve it?
Because it happened before, the moment I was. How could I have done anything to deserve it?
Okay, I'm just trying to.
I inherit the fallen nature because of Adam's sin. Right?
You got this. All right. You're assuming. I'm trying. You keep coming back to this idea that you're being blamed for something that wasn't your fault.
The effect.
And I'm not saying that.
Yeah, the effect.
You're feeling the effect of it.
Mm-hmm.
You're feeling the effect of an action.
Yeah,
just like that wave coming down through there.
Yeah.
You didn't, and you said, well, God could have stopped this.
Yeah.
And I would say, yes, he could have, but he didn't. And in not stopping that, he has not done any injustice.
But do you think, yes or no, did I deserve to have a fallen nature from birth?
You're assuming that as an act of judgment on Adam that you're getting something that you didn't deserve.
I
And I
don't
would
know what's
say,
I don't understand what you just said then, but like, I just felt like it's a simple yes/no question. I mean, do you think that I deserve
well,
to have
everybody
a
says that,
corrupted
it's just a
nature?
simple yes/no question, but then you're not you're assuming you get certain assumptions built into there that don't fit into the whole puzzle. You're feeling the effects of something that someone else did,
Mm-hmm.
in that your nature has been corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this comes back to the analogy I started off with, the analogy of the plate that has been taken out and dirtied, and now is unfit to receive what it was designed to receive.
Okay, but can we just go
So
back to my question though? I asked you.
cut out.
Sorry, I didn't understand what you said then.
You cut out for a second.
You
said
cut out for a
Okay,
something
my-
just
second,
about the time you.
Okay, so my question was, I just wanted to go back to my question because I didn't really understand what your answer was, right? Did I deserve to inherit a fallen nature?
Did you deserve to? Did any of us deserve to inherit? Well, that assumes that that I'm not sure. It's kind of funny. I've been watching a lot of Perot mysteries lately, and many of the and one of the mysteries I've been watching involved a question of inheritance, and this guy deliberately forged the will so that he wouldn't inherit, which I thought was interesting because he wanted
Okay.
himself disinherited.
That's cool and everything, but
So
like,
that's
just
just
that is just
that's
beside
beside
the
the
point,
point.
isn't
But
it?
here's the analogy. Okay, again we come to a different analogy.
Sorry, I
Inheritance.
don't understand this. Can you just answer the question? I mean, I don't understand what's so difficult about it. Why does it have to be an analogy? I'm just asking you. Do you think I deserve to inherit that?
I'm trying to. Okay, so what is an inheritance?
bro.
Well, it's
look,
something you.
Bro, look, this should be an easy answer for you. God is perfectly just.
Well, I'm
but
trying.
Hold
trying.
on. Hold on a second. Would you just listen for a second? God is perfectly just.
Mhm.
God is always going to get whatever someone gets. It's always going to be what they deserve. Alex Scott has a fallen nature. Does Alex deserve his fallen nature? Yes or no? No analogies, no stories, no talking about Rick and Morty last night. Just yes or no.
It's not a yes or no question.
It is. I'm saying, do I? Because the obvious answer is no, right? I haven't done anything. The answer, right? I didn't deserve it. Of course,
this is who are you getting the inheritance from?
doesn't matter, right? If I get an
Yes,
inheritance,
it does.
it doesn't. It doesn't make any difference, right? If I didn't do anything to deserve it, like an actual inheritance, parents die and they leave me money. I didn't do anything to deserve that, right? That's not fair. Inheritance should be taxed. It should just go into the state pot, right? That would be fair. Inheritance is intrinsically unjust, right? But in particular, inheriting a shit sandwich because of what Adam did is also unjust.
Look,
Obviously.
if Alex is getting something that he doesn't deserve, then God is not just. If God is not just, God does not exist. You're done. You're going to have to say that he does deserve it.
Yeah, and then I'm going to ask you why. How come? Right? What did I do? There can't be an answer to that because it happens before I'm born.
Well,
right? You can tell me that there's some story where somebody did something and then something else happened. He just looked at me and said, "Yeah, you have."
We're coming back to here. Okay. The question of inheritance. Who are you inheriting it
Bro,
from?
look, everybody wants to talk. We want to hear your qualification, your reasoning, all this. But can you answer the question first, man? It's not a hard question. So we've reached a fork in the road. In order to actually proceed with the conversation, actually go somewhere substantive, you have to answer the question. You are refusing to answer the question, and it actually should be an easy question to answer. God's perfectly just. Everybody gets what they deserve. Alex got a fallen nature. Alex got what he deserved, right?
Well, you're assuming that he got that from God. That's the reason why I'm saying the question is not answerable in those terms. He didn't get it from God, he got it from Adam. So
Yeah,
if you're saying
but
it's,
God could have
it's
prevented
unfair,
it, but he didn't, right?
he could have killed Adam. That's what you're saying.
No, again, we've gone over this already. I don't know why we're going. He could have just said, I'll punish Adam however I see fit, but no one else has to bear any. Just like he does, just like anyone would expect any other incident ever. If I steal from a bank, you don't go to prison. And if you did, it would be unfair, it would be unjust, right? It's not difficult, it's straightforward. Like, it's not
Okay, so
gotcha,
when
it's just an obvious question. And like, it just seems like you don't want to answer it because obviously the difficulty is there, right? Either way of answering that question
the
is
difficulty
difficult.
exists because I have different premises.
You don't. I'm using your
That's
premises.
what I'm talking about. Your premise. You're starting with the wrong premises.
Oh, wait, but without going into a massive story and an analogy or whatever, like what premise is wrong?
Your premise is let's go ahead and I concede all these things about God that God does within his realm, in his sphere, what he wants. Now, to address, I think it was Tom,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that God doesn't exist.
No, but that
has nothing to do with it.
it's not just that God
All
does
right.
anything he wants, therefore he doesn't exist, right? Nobody's saying that, right? What's happened is that we're combining a couple of different things. Tell me which is false, right? God is perfect. Do you think that's true or false?
Yeah.
Yes, what you think it's true, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that means that he's morally perfect. Is that right?
Correct.
And that means that, let's say unless he's going to show mercy, he's just. Judgments are like fair and balanced, and they give people what they're owed, and don't give people things that they're not owed. Right?
Right.
Do you agree with that? Okay, so you agree with all of those things,
Right.
and nevertheless, you must agree. It seems to me it's obvious that I didn't do anything to deserve a fallen nature, right?
Mhm.
Do you agree with that? That I didn't do anything to deserve a fallen nature? You agree? Okay. So that's just a yes to my question from before then.
Okay. Here we go. You did nothing to deserve it.
Yeah.
That assumes that your reception of that fallen nature has anything to do with what you deserve. Again,
no, if I got it because of independently of what I did, right? If it was given to me besides independently of whether I was a good person or a bad person, then that would be unjust, right? If it's in accord with what I did, if it was handed down to me just because I was a bad person, then maybe it would be okay.
If your direction of reception seems to think it's coming from one location when it's actually coming from another.
No, look, you just get look. Okay, so all you're trying to do is say it was Adam. Did Adam push the first domino over? Domino fell over, right? But okay, cool. Let's just grant that he did. I'm not even disputing that. Who cares? The point is, as we were talking about with the kids bumping into each other in the playground, where one of them, if the teacher is looking and has a fire extinguisher and he doesn't do anything, right? Forget about who started the fire. Let's just ask the question, is the teacher responsible for not putting out the fire? Doesn't matter who started it. That question is the question. It would, is answered the same if it was Jimmy or Timmy that started the fire. It doesn't matter which one of them started it, right? It's just a question. He could have prevented it, but he didn't, right? So to that extent, he bears.
Well, what did he have to prevent?
Mark against
what
him.
did he have to prevent? I'm not. See, the problem is you're saying, okay, somebody has started a fire. Now we've all gotten bumped into. Now we're all on fire, and so someone needs to come in and put out the fire.
No,
I
someone was
agree
there the
with
whole time watching.
I agree with those premises completely. All right.
Wait, hold on. Just so you agree with exactly what I'm saying, if there's a teacher there watching the whole time, doesn't come in after everyone's on fire, he's watching from the beginning, right? Sees Timmy playing with the lighter and catch fire. First of all, he doesn't prevent him from doing that, but also he doesn't, he lets Timmy bump into everybody without stopping it, right?
Mhm.
Do you think that that's okay for the teacher? Like, morally speaking, he's just fine if he does that.
We're talking about these are two different. You're talking about two different things and trying
But
to
let's
make
just
them the
focus
same
on this
thing.
one at the time. This one first, right? Do you think that the teacher is okay to let the kids bump into each other and swear about it?
Okay, so you got the teacher who has one set of responsibilities, just to make sure, and the
It's not in virtue of him being a teacher. He could be
and
a bystander.
you're criticizing the reaction time. You're saying well, the teacher should not have allowed this to happen.
Listen, sorry, if we were actually talking about a real school, do you reckon you're taking this like nitpicky stuff about like we're criticizing? Right? No, of course
Well, we're not. We're trying to analogize, and every analogy has to analogy breaks down at some point.
Look, I'm just trying to take it slowly. Let's just think about the teacher
Mhm.
example, right? Don't worry about the God example.
Right.
Just think about a teacher and they're watching a school,
Right.
a playground, and a fire starts and they're holding a fire extinguisher and they just stand there and let all of the kids burn to death, right?
Why were they holding
Obviously,
the fire extinguisher?
they were holding the fire extinguisher in case there was a fire, right?
Were they holding it the
Obviously.
whole time?
Yeah.
Were they
Looking directly at
so they were anticipating the fire.
Yeah.
Now your criticism is that because they were anticipating that a fire would break out, now you're criticizing the fact that that even though they anticipated it, they didn't react quick enough to once it started and then it began to
It's not about the
have an
speed. They don't
effect.
do anything. They don't do anything. They don't prevent anyone from burning to death. So it's not a question of speed. It's not like we let 7 kids die instead of 8. It doesn't matter, right? Surely, maybe it's worse to let them all die, but it's still to some extent bad to let one of them bump. Who cares about speed? You're making these distinctions that just are not addressing the point. It's like, I don't know why you can't just say, yeah, obviously a teacher, or just for that matter, anybody, right? A bystander in any respect, has a moral obligation to prevent those kids from burning to death, especially if they could prevent it. Right? This is such an easy question. It's like, I don't understand why you don't just go, yeah, obviously.
We're getting from because your prevention is distinct from anticipation.
Sure, okay, but still, I'm just saying, aren't they under an obligation to do it? And if they don't do it, isn't that bad? Why can't you just say yeah? Because it just seems like it's obviously the case. You don't need to go, yeah, well, there's a distinction. Because
I'm recognizing that there are distinctions within actions.
Are they relevant to whether or not it would be a bad thing?
I would argue that what would be where is the bad in this? Are you complaining about the slowness of the teacher's action, or are you complaining about the initial starting of the fire?
I'm complaining about the teacher's reaction.
Teacher's reaction. All right.
They don't put out the kids, right? They don't put out the fire, but they could do, and that's bad, isn't it? I don't know if we can make it any clearer than that.
Well, bad in what sense?
Morally bad.
See,
it's a morally bad thing for them to do. Evil. It's bad. It's not permissible, right? Unjust. It's not a good thing.
Who says?
Who says? I'm asking you whether you think it's the case. Do you think it's true that if the teacher doesn't put out the fire, that it's morally bad? Do you think that that's true? I mean, I do. I don't know what's so difficult to say yeah.
Well, I'm like I said, I'm trying to justify these analogies.
Okay, I'll ask you another question, right? I've got 2 B, right, and then another
Hold on, you're breaking
2
up
beans?
again.
You're kind of cutting out a
Right?
little bit, Alex. I don't know. if
I'm
you're on
saying,
push
here's
the
another
button.
question, right? I've got 2 beans in my hand, right? 2 baked beans, and then I pick out another 2 baked beans from the can, and I put them together with the original first 2. How many beans have I got in my?
You have 4.
Okay, so you can answer an obvious question, right? But it's just when I ask you this other obvious question that you're like, oh, humming and hawing. We have the distinction. And what's the difference between a bean and another bean? What do you mean by hand, right? It's just, this is really frustrating. If a teacher doesn't prevent kids from like needlessly burning to death, that's obviously bad. And it's insane that you could hum and haw about it.
We're again,
Look,
we're trying
Trigger.
to now.
Jake,
Yeah.
Jake. Let's say that you're a parent, and there's been a PTA meeting. Okay, you are. Okay, that's great. There's a PTA meeting that was called, right? And they're reviewing the CCTV footage from the fire, right? Now, the teacher's holding the fire extinguisher. All the children are on fire, and the teacher sits there holding the fire extinguisher in one hand and playing Candy Crush Saga on the other hand, glancing upwards every once in a while to see the temperature of the kids. And once they've reached well done and have all died, she fucks off or something like that. Now, while you and all the other parents at the PTA meeting are watching this CCTV footage, and everyone is saying, "Wow, you know what? I think the teacher really messed up. That was really bad." Are you going to be in that situation, be doing what you are doing now and saying, "Well, by what standard?"
No.
What would you say?
I would say that the teacher's messed up.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
But then again, I'm assuming a categorical distinction here. Teacher is placed in responsibility by us for the safety and care of our kids. So, and so when we're doing that now, if we're going to step back and we're going to say, okay, we're going to make this an equal analogy, we have to be able to make categorical distinctions within those different levels.
Look, hold on a second. I don't think that the person, let's suppose that this person standing by watching the kids, right, play with the lighter isn't the teacher. He's like walking past the playground on the street, right? And that he's not holding a fire extinguisher, just happens to be there, right? So he's not under any kind of like responsibility due to his role in society. But he just sees that there's kids on fire. Now, as far as I'm concerned, moral responsibility is held by somebody independently of anything, socially dictated, right? It's not just because he's like the mayor of town, he's got this responsibility, moral responsibility. If he's got a moral responsibility to do something, it's just in virtue of being an agent, right? Every agent is under the same moral obligations as each other. So it's got nothing to do with their role. Every agent. What do you mean human agent? I mean non-human agent. Aliens, I don't know, animals, whatever, right? Why would I make a distinction about that? It's got nothing to do with being human. It's about being able to see what's true.
Because they're different things.
Okay, so do you think, so what you're going to say is what, like God can let people burn to death and for him it's different? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because he's categorically different.
But in what way? I mean, what could make that? So is God good? Is God morally perfect, right? But so morally, you can be morally perfect, but not have basic obligation to stop people like burning each other and stuff. But you can still be morally perfect.
Where does our obligation come from?
Well, I mean, what difference does that make, right? If I think that the moral, like native tree, just like sui generis, non-natural things, right? So what, right? Like, do we have to have a conversation about meta ethics? I mean, it doesn't. The point is, like, if they apply to anybody, they, right? Aren't they universal?
Alex, you're kind of cutting out a little bit. I don't know if you're on voice activity. You might want to push to.
Hold on. I don't know why that's happening. I'm using my good mic. Can you hear me now?
How do I sound, just out of curiosity? Do I
Yeah.
sound...
You sound fine.
Just get closer.
Okay.
You might be like dropping slightly.
Yeah, there might be
below
some
the voice
threshold or
activity
something.
threshold, and then it's cutting out.
Maybe I can change that, actually. I can change that in settings, I guess.
Yeah,
Something
I think
like
you
that.
want to move the bar to the left.
In devices, maybe? No? Audio, video?
Voice and audio, and then voice sensitivity. Voice and video.
Yeah.
Voice and video, and then if you have voice activity checked, it'll have
Yep.
a bar, and then you're gonna have it's gonna be automatically determine input sensitivity. If that's what you're on, you want to uncheck that, and then you can move the bar to the left so that it picks up when you're speaking lower.
Okay, good. I've moved it to the left. It's like -81 or something.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, well, so far.
Okay. I can't remember what I was saying now because I've...
Okay, but like
Gone through all
let's
of
just
that.
do just like a quick reset. Like it's just some growing concern that this is maybe run its course. I mean, I think that you are still trying to work it out. So you're okay? Everybody's okay?
I mean, yeah, I'm happy to do whatever. I mean, it's your channel, and I don't want to flog a dead horse.
Well-
No, we're all just sort of like here, just spectating. But I mean, you don't feel obligated to continue if you don't want to.
Depending on what, there is someone else who wants to talk to you, by the name of Albedo. So if you feel like you've still got more mileage out of Triggerman, by all means. But if you feel like it's run its course, then we do have another champion. Who
Well,
you know.
okay. I don't know whether... I feel like I have repeated myself quite a lot this evening with Jake. I mean...
Yeah, I think
don't
that's
know.
true. I feel like you've kind of both said everything, and you might just be repeating yourself from here on in.
Hey,
Albedo, are you there?
Hey.
I am.
Oh.
Have at it,
Well,
bro.
Hold on a sec. So just if we're ending that, then I just want to say thanks to Jake for coming on. I didn't mean to get
You
too...
guys can conclude. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, no, I mean, just whenever you're ready. I don't want you to feel obligated to keep going if you feel like you're repeating yourself.
Well, there's one point that I think I just need to state it is that we're trying to... We're assuming that there are certain that the same obligation exists at different levels without justifying the necessity of the obligation at those levels.
Yeah. Maybe you want to end with another analogy, maybe like a deep frying a turkey analogy, and how that somehow is analogous.
Well, the only way that I mean, I've just stuck with, that, just to reiterate what I hold, is that just the plate analogy, that human beings have an intended end, that end doesn't change even though we've been corrupted. So it can't do the job as good as it does now. That is distinct from blame. That is distinct from anything else, and that there are cause and effect relationships that exist within that. And basically, if anybody wants to know where I stand, I think I kind of spelled it out in my in what I wrote. And I'm happy to talk with anybody. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on my blog. I'll be around. Just if anybody has anything they want to say, I'm all ears. But I think we've we're kind of dancing around dancing around the circle here, and we haven't we've got our minds made up, and trying to reconcile them across a void is almost impossible.
Triggerman, do you mind if I ask a question about the very end of the discussion? Why is it bad for like the teacher to do nothing about the children being set on fire, but not bad for God?
We're assuming I keep going back to categories, and what we're assuming are required in that category.
I really did promise Albedo he could talk to Alex, and Alex's
All
time
right,
is limited.
I,
So
I
let's
will.
do that.
I
Let's do
will
that
duck
right now.
out and
Hey, Triggerman, come
Thanks for
back
coming.
anytime. Come back
All right.
anytime. Thanks for joining the server. We'd love to talk to you some more. But Alex, Albedo's been, begging for this. So go ahead, Albedo.
Peter's Lane.
Cool. Cheers, man.
Hi, Alex. Good to meet you.
Hi.
I'd actually kind of like to just carry on the same kind of conversation, if that's all right.
Okay.
It sounds like you're kind of running some kind of problem of evil. I'm not sure if it's like the logical or evidential. That
Okay. Go on.
is that kind of what it boils down to? Is one of those two?
I think it's very closely related. I'm not sure if it's necessarily exactly the same. Maybe it is, but
Okay.
I was thinking of it as being independent, but I'm open to
Okay.
being shown that it's not.
Okay. Well, if it at least like to dispel the logical problem. I mean, simply by saying, is it logically possible that it is a good thing that you inherit the sin nature? So, I mean, I think we can just dispel the logical problem if we can grant that it's at least logically possible that that's the case.
So let me just try and put the argument to you, and you can tell me whether you think that that works as a way out, right? Like, I want to say, like, it's true that, somebody getting punished for something they didn't do is unjust, right? That's like maybe premise 1 or something. Premise 2 is that original sin is, in some way or another, as we've seen in the last conversation, you have to discuss the detail of this, but my claim is that it is I inherit something I didn't deserve. It's effectively a punishment for something I didn't deserve, right? In which case the two things are analogous to each other, right? In the right way, so that if the first one is moral, is a case of injustice, so is the second, right? So it seems to me that there's like, you'd have to deny that. I don't think it's just fair to say, well, there could be some reason or something, because like, what are you saying? That there could be some way in which, like, the guy who gets put in prison for a crime they didn't commit, is there some way in which that isn't a case of injustice? Is that what you're saying? Like, I'm not even sure I do think that that's true, that it's even logically possible. I think if they didn't do it, then I don't think it's logically possible that that it could be just that they go to prison for it, right?
Yeah.
And if the two cases are analogous, then I'm not even sure it works to appeal to just the bare possibility that maybe, do you know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to try to represent his view, but although I think it's probably going to be aligned with it, is that it isn't a punishment that you're receiving, even though it may be unfair. It's not like it's a moral question as to receiving this like cause and effect.
Well, you mean it's not a punishment because it's like, it's not that he's directly coming up to me and like giving me the inherited, the fallen nature, right? That it's a kind of causal consequence of something else that happened.
Yeah, you don't deserve it because it's not a moral consequence.
All right, but so tell me, in what way is it causal, right? Like what caused what?
Well,
I guess
I mean, that would be a good question. I'm not sure how they would answer this. I
It seems to me
assume it has to be something like spiritual. So
right. It's like a metaphysical impact that it has,
Mhm.
right? But then that's, there's no laws about that and nothing that could prevent God from overriding them. So why just, it's not like he couldn't stop that. If that's true, and if there is some like some spiritual inheritance, that's just because God made it that way. That's how he instigated things, right?
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
not beyond his control. It's not beyond his choice. So how is that different from him just giving it to me directly? He gave it to me via like one step removed, via a contrivance that he made. It doesn't make any difference.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if this was his view, but I mean, I am gonna like understand this in terms of like this telos idea, and you're being directed towards some end, and the end is God. However, and I mean, this is probably going to be against his view. Is it would be very tough for me to imagine, like, because I guess the idea that you want to say is like, why am I going to be punished in the end? And I don't think you would be. It would be very tough to reconcile this type of idea with a hell. So I don't think that this is going to work with your argument, because I think you want to say like, how would I be? Because essentially the point of the sin nature for these people is they want to say they're going to be stuck in hell. That's like the punishment that you're getting pushed for that you didn't deserve, right?
No, I'm not focusing on the afterlife kind of punishment here. Just having the sinful nature is already, in a way, a punishment I don't deserve.
Well,
it's true
what
that
is
it
the
also
thing?
makes me more likely to go to hell, and that's another thing about it that's messed up. But
But there's
makes
no
me
hell.
corrupted, right? Oh well, let's say there's no hell. If you think that there is such a thing as a fallen nature that makes me corrupted, disposition towards sin, corrupted epistemic faculties, whatever, I'm in some way or other, my shoelaces have been tied, right? And that's unfair even if I win the race, even if I go on to not lose the race, right? Forget the outcome. Just the fact that my shoelaces were tied together. I didn't deserve that. That's not cool. That's what inheriting a fallen nature is like, right?
Yeah. Well, I definitely think it's going to push against like our intuitions. That, I mean, it seems like it's possible for God to prevent this thing, but they're going to be committed to this, that like God does only good things, and we have it here in the world. So there's a reason for it, even if they can't give you the reason.
Well, but I mean, I don't understand how. I don't really understand how that works. So it's like if you were to say, so you're saying, look, on the one hand, I agree with this case where somebody goes to prison for something they didn't do. I agree that that's unjust, right? I agree that.
I agree. It seems unjust. Yeah.
Seems unjust.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. It's like all these are intuitions. We don't have access to the ontology of these moral facts.
Well, okay, but look, I mean, my kind of doxastic stance on whether that's unjust or not is that I kind of wholeheartedly agree that it's unjust. I don't qualify that by saying, well, it kind of seems unjust, like a kind of borderline case or something. Like my attitude is it's definitely unjust, quite clearly, paradigmatically so, right?
Yeah.
So do you agree with that?
I'm about as certain of it as I am, most things in my life. Yeah.
Exactly, right. It's not a borderline case. And if somebody else agrees with that, there's a premise, right? It's difficult if you think that, then the second claim is that the Christian original sin doctrine is analogous to that paradigmatically unjust case, right? If you agree with the analogy claim, then it's really difficult to see how you can combine that with just a kind of epistemic, a kind of skeptical theism or something, where you say, well, he must have a morally sufficient reason or something for allowing this injustice to happen, must have a morally sufficient reason. Because that's like saying, maybe, I'm not actually that confident about that clear-cut black and white case of injustice, right? Like, what do you think that you could be somehow like, why should you think that you're uncertain about that? I just don't see how these two things pull together. Like, if you were to take yourself to like know that God's good and therefore everything that happens must be just, therefore this thing that looks unjust must be just. It's like you're questioning something that you otherwise take yourself to know very confidently. As you said, know something that you know about as well as you know anything else, right? And it's like, at the very least, you're entitled to sort of run the argument in the other direction, to say, well, this is obviously unjust, right? And this thing in the world, this Christian story is just like that. Therefore, this perfect being doesn't exist. I mean, it's, even if all I do is set up an argument where they're kind of symmetrical, like you could just run a modus tollens against this modus ponens or something, at least then it kind of like, I'm happy with it being a complete symmetry, because like, equality is fine. I'm not trying to like necessarily, show that Christianity is false, but like it does seem to me that it's not like that anyway. I mean, I know the case of injustice more strongly than I know any of the other premises, right? I'm not gonna, I don't know. To me, it just seems very, very straightforward that you would just say, look, this collection of stories is Christian tradition or whatever. It's just obviously not true. This is one of the reasons that it's not true. It has a failed attempt at cashing out the consequences of a perfect being, right? Imperfectly tells a story about what the universe would be like if there was a perfect being, but it gets it wrong because it embodies a story that's like not what you should have if that was the case. So that shows you the story is wrong. It seems to be, I don't know, I just feel like I would still be entitled to say that, even if the Christian sort of takes some skeptical theistic option for them. Yeah, so I don't know whether, maybe that doesn't really make much sense, but
No, I think I think I would even hold your position, but it's my understanding that a lot of these Christians just have like higher priors for God, and rather than like their seemings of like apparent evils.
Mhm.
And so when they do these types of like moral evaluations, they just think that their evaluations are incorrect and that God exists and all of his actions are still just.
Yeah,
So,
so maybe that's right. I think maybe that's right. Maybe if someone's inclined to say something like the fawn dying in the fire or something, like just looks like a gratuitous evil, but that's just my seeming of it or something. If you can take yourself to deny seemingly obvious claims like that, maybe you would you could also be skeptical enough to say, gee, I don't know, that like guy who didn't do the crime but went to prison for the rest of his life and the other guy got off scot-free, gee, maybe that's not a case of injustice because of some reason I can't understand. I mean, maybe you could say that, but I don't know.
Well, what could it possibly be?
Exactly.
If they take the skeptical theism route, though, then they just get impaled on. Yeah, they just get impaled on the Pandora's box objection.
Right, exactly.
So you could just frame it as a kind of dilemma, right? That either God doesn't exist or, you're committed to global skepticism or something like that.
Yeah. So if they want to avoid that, then it seems like you're obviously going to say there are some things that I could know, right? I'm not in that skeptical kind of consequence of skeptical theism. And one of those things that you would take yourself to know is things like if somebody gets sent to prison for something they didn't do, that's unjust. That would be the sort of thing you would take yourself to know.
well, I mean, I don't think the skeptical, well, I guess it depends on what you're considering skeptical theism here, but I think they want to say that they know at least some of God's reason, maybe not all of them. Because I think they want to rule, well, like I said, under this view of like what good is, a hell couldn't exist. So if hell existed, God doesn't exist. So I think you could, obviously we wouldn't be able to figure it out here, but like in principle, there's at least a way that God doesn't exist.
Yeah, but I don't know. Are you familiar with this Pandora's box argument?
Yeah, that like if you allow like, a skepticism about like the Holocaust, it may be like reason enough for him to like fool you into like whether or not the outside world exists.
Right, but also any of the things that, so if you try and say, I'm a skeptical theist, but I still take myself to know that God said A, B, and C, right? Once you start saying, yeah, but he could have morally sufficient reasons for making me think the Holocaust was bad, but actually it was good. He could also, of course, have morally sufficient reasons for making you think that you knew that God had told you A, B, and C when you hadn't, right? So the point is that you can't isolate a bit of God's knowledge and say, yeah, I do know that, but I'm also a skeptical theist. It kind of infects everything.
See, but how is that not just like, so if they don't know like all but one of his reasons, are you saying that one reason is enough to undermine all of your epistemology?
No, it's not just that if you say I don't know all of his reasons, but if you start off by trying to use it, at least this way I think about it, if you start off by trying to use it as, this thing appears very strongly to be a case of evil, like gratuitous evil, and we have a very strong intuition or whatever, like the Holocaust was evil, or the fawn dying in the forest fire is a gratuitous natural evil or whatever. The point is that even though if that feels super correct to you and super intuitive, but you think that God might allow you to be fooled about that, right? Then that is